Mr. John Rodney, Canadian Trade Commissioner to Qatar, distinguished guests, fellow bankers, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure and privilege for me to be an integral part of this interesting afternoon. I was at an International Monetary Fund meeting, and as we speak, I heard the breaking news that U.S. Congress is reaching a consensus on raising the debt limits. The reason why I'm saying this is there is no real meeting took place. Substance remains. The politicians, policymakers, the bankers and economists, financial media were all disappointed. It was confusion confounded, to say the least. The sit-in agenda was well thought through. There's no question about the fact that global recovery was on. Right from 2008, visibly when the world was at stake, when Lehman Brothers collapsed, subsequently financial economies were in the conversion mode to become real. Real economies were redefining the scope and performance. It was quantitative, accommodative monetary policy, quantitative easing, helped us to see liquidity has improved across the globe. What has changed is the liquidity. The liquidity crisis has become the funding crisis. Funding crisis has become a sovereign crisis. Eventually it settled as solvency issue for countries like Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal. It has had a huge contagion impact. Printing money, improving the liquidity has inflated the stock markets, transcending borders. Emerging markets were a recipient as well, but they were widely fluctuating in substance in terms of ups and downs. The changing dynamics has given us impetus to see at least there's a momentum going. G7 has become G8, G8 has become G20, world at large saw some resolutions which are responsive enough to see global growth is coming back on track. That's what we have seen last 5 years. The substance remains. It is only liquidity and the policy decisions in G20 which were responsive for us to see a cautious optimism can be casted on the overall global growth. But politics and economics world over was not converging. That's the reality. Pre-globalization, politics was preceding the economics. In a globalization era, it is convergence of politics and economics drive the change. It's globalization. It's re-regulation now. From deregulation, it has moved to deregulation. And consumerism, we are redefining the global space. It's not confined to Lehman Brothers or Wachovia or Washington Mutual. World at large visibly was at stake. Global governance was at stake in substance. Unless we set a universal standard in terms of accounting, valuation, securitization, and recapitalize the banks to become trustworthy, world at large were distrusting the financial institutions. That was the dictum. Today, JP Morgan has consented to settle the score for the breach of certain irregularities. By far, it's an extraordinary institution in terms of professional caliber. The enterprise risk integration is a different animal today. It is redefining the scope and performance. Regulators are redefining the scope and performance. Auditors have failed. Rating agencies have failed. And again, customers were let down. Trustworth was not there between the customers and financial institutions. That was the definition of the issue. With the change in face of the world, with the change in face of the financial service, new world order was set in. But execution has to take place. Some of the decisions which was taken in London, Pittsburgh, Korea, and St. Petersburg last week needs to be executed to make sure we create a better world. We create ethical and moral world, moral governance to see, world is becoming better. We create public trust. Whether you run a private bank or a public bank, whether you run a local bank or an international bank, it is public, it is global. That's the reality. How do you change the world? How do you realign your business model? How do you set in missions for UN Millennium Development Goals needs to be transcended borders and make sure we create a better world. That's the substance of the politicians and economists and the bankers, of course. Today, we are all coming together. What I saw in IMF a couple of days before is quite revealing. We have seen IMF predictions that global growth should be in the range of 3.5%. Now it has been downward revised to 2.9%. Advanced economies are going to perform not more than 1.2%. Possibly it might do 2% next year, 2014. That's the last week IMF outlook. United States, which is the single largest economy, 20% of the world imports, 12% of the world exports today, is reeling under pressure. It was coming to terms by accommodative monetary policy, as we mentioned, as improve the liquidity, and they set in conditions to do quantitative tapering. They have to achieve three conditions. Number one, the growth should be in the ascending trend. Number two, unemployment should be brought down to 6.5%. Jobless claims should be less. And again, inflation should be 2% plus. Improving the purchasing power parity is an integral part of the overall economics. That's precisely the reason in June, the Federal Reserve Chairman was mentioning about QE tapering, thinking that the economy is in the right track. Lack of political consensus between Republican and Democrats today, it's a huge significance. I was in Washington College a couple of days before, day before yesterday. I'm the alumni from Washington College. I had a privilege of addressing the students, and the president was asking me a question. What do you think the consequence of lack of consensus? What will happen if debt limits are not enhanced? It's unthinkable in substance. Imagine the world's largest economy, which is AAA rated, gets downgraded. S&P has already downgraded to AA. Fitch has already put in today as negative outlook. What will happen if it is getting into a junk status? What will happen to the financial markets? What will happen to the stock market? What will happen to the currency market? The universal currency today is dollar. What are the alternates today in terms of exchange mechanism? Is there a matured, liquid, tradable currency than dollar? Convergence criteria, which are set in by Maastricht Treaty in Europe, is still reeling under pressure. It's an extraordinary situation. It's a defining moment if you look at the changes which are happening in the world. Unthinkable to see this, the least. The world at large will deleverage. The world has to deflate. The global balance sheet has to be deflated. Investments dynamics will change. Trillions of dollars have been placed in US Treasury. China, Japan, apart from Federal Reserve. What will happen to those investments? How will you exchange the currency mechanism when a country is not stable in repaying its capacity? What will happen to the rest of the currency markets? What will happen to the commodity market, which are all denominated in dollars, petrodollars? What will happen to gold, precious metals? Think about it. I can dimension it. I can go on. I just written an article today in the local newspaper in the Gulf. I've been getting response for this. It's unthinkable, to say the least. That's the kind of situation we are in. That's the world we are in. These are the dynamics we are facing today. In the midst, we have to necessarily recognize convergence has to take place in substance world over, whether it is emerging markets or developed economies. Developed markets were getting back on track. That's the substance. There's no question about it. The minute we saw US recovery was on, the emerging markets were slowing down. You could see that quantitative easing, when it's happens, the capital flow which was happening in the emerging markets were all withdrawn. You saw the volatility in the stock market. You saw the currency depreciation. Countries like India, Indonesia, Thai baht. Open market operation has helped even Japanese economy. The politicians were predicting that they will change the fate of the economy. Abenomics was invented. The substance was visible. Today, Nikkei is 40% up year to date. That's the changing world. Europe still under pressure. The monetary policy is centralized. Fiscal policy is decentralized. When you have enlarged Europe, the cultural breakups are different. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. The gross debt to GDP, if you say 100% over for United States, 16 trillion plus, 16.6 trillion plus. Japan is 200%. Look at, except Germany, gross debt to GDP, what was set in the Maastricht criteria was all breached. And again, if you look at the emerging markets, India, gross debt to GDP is 20%. And that's a very sound financial breakup. But emerging markets are interdependent with the advanced economies in terms of business process outsourcing, knowledge process outsourcing. And again, world over, we are living in interconnected, interdependent world. I call it as Facebook world. The changes which are happening is interesting to watch. In the Arab world, we have Arab Spring converting as Arab Summer now. We had 2011, we had started with Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, Syria now. And again, Egypt's bouncing back on the same track. So this is an extraordinary geopolitical frame. In the midst, we have seen the Gulf economies. I have a structured presentation. I said, Tony, I will not get into the structure between the lunch and you. I thought I'll interact with you in substance. The Gulf states, if you look at it, it's $1.6 trillion block. Tony was mentioning about the 6 states. It starts with Oman, United Arab Emirates, which has got its own net, and again, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and Kuwait. $1.6 trillion block, as good as Canada in terms of overall gross domestic product. And again, Canadian population is 35 million. We have around 40 million plus. If you look at the macroeconomic fundamentals, they are very, very strong. 40% of the world oil, 22% of the world gas emanates from the Gulf states. All these countries are running in fiscal and current account surplus. As a percentage of GDP, the current account surplus is over 20%, taking oil at $60. Today, with dollar getting weakened, Brent is quoting $110 and WTI NewMax is $101. You can calculate the investable surplus, fiscal surplus these countries can generate. It's a huge affluence. And again, if you look at the overall macroeconomic indicators, the inflation is under control. Projects worth multi-trillion is in the making. In a way, Arab Spring has turned the tides towards social progression within the Gulf definition. Healthcare, education, that's where Canada has got bigger opportunity. I'll come to terms. That's the reality. And within the Gulf definition, Qatar is the telling story. I have the privilege of being part of the overall economic momentum over 10 years plus. Qatar economic visions was well founded. Way back in 1998, Qatar went into the international market and borrowed funds. I challenged the finance minister in a conference. After a couple of years, I had the privilege of being part of the growth story. I asked him, why do you do that? They didn't do flyovers or aerodromes or building bridges. They got into industrial expansion, having realized there's a huge conserved resources in terms of oil and gas. They got their priorities right. They made sure, as a young nation, they work hard to reap the benefits. Last 15 years, consecutive current account surplus, investable surplus, sovereign funds world over in multiple markets, multiple sectors have been placed. It's an extraordinary economic story. Economic progression is visible. When it comes to social progression, borrowing money, investing in education. I don't know how many of you have heard about Qatar Foundation, Cornell, Texas A&M, Virginia Common, Georgetown, Carnegie Mellon, where my daughter's qualified. She's sitting here. My wife is also here, along with my sister. So the vision to invest in education is very, very, very profound. Healthcare, again. When it comes to political progressions, Qatar was behaving as a good statesman, whether it's Darfur or Lebanon or Syria, or again, making sure some of the investable surplus, sovereign funds are supported for Arab brethren. They invested on all these countries to see freedom and democracy comes in, sustainable growth comes in. That's the level of convergence I'm talking about, political progression, economic progression, and a social progression. That's the level of governance. In substance, Qatar is there. Again, when it comes to Canada, in terms of macroeconomic fundamentals, it's an extraordinary, stable, and functional economy. Financial stability is unchallenged. The country continue to grow while the rest of the advanced economies are reeling under pressure. Retaining its AAA rating and ensuring 1.5, 1.6% is commendable. World at large was running in technical recession, and financial stability has been the key for Canada. IMF outlook says 1.6%. It can reach 1.7 to 2% for next year and thereafter. And you have a per capita which is moving in the right direction for 35 million people, over $50,000. And you have a current account which is running in very marginal deficit. That's measurable, manageable, controllable. That's a very sound footing in substance. The banks are time and again rated as very sound banks. World Economic Forum ascribed every year cash judgments on countries' balance sheets and countries' financial stability. And again, Canada stands tall. The banks are all doing very well. I could see many of the bankers here. It's a substance in real order. And we also have to recognize what sort of bilateral opportunities can come in. When Tony was mentioning about Doha Bank's vision, it's my privilege and honor to be integral part of the economic story. Being an economist or a banker, whichever way you want to describe my professional profile, I saw the light where the change in face of the world, change in face of the financial service. And with the change in face of the world, wherever Qatar and the Gulf states have got economic linkage, we set in. In 2002, Canada was in the map of Doha Bank's growth, but the sequencing was different. The single largest relationship was Japan. We are there for the Gulf states. The second largest relationship is Korea. We are there. And again, it is Singapore, India. I applied for a license. I haven't got a license. That's a different issue. And again, within the Gulf definition, wherever there is a cross-border trade, bilateral opportunities, it is UAE is the single largest relationship. Doha Bank is there in Dubai as well as Abu Dhabi. And again, Kuwait. These are carefully crafted blueprints. The vision to integrate Doha Bank from a local to regional, regional to global was conceived 10 years before. And ensuring maintaining sustainable performance. And that's what the key. Whether it's a boom or downturn, a good institution should perform, irrespective of the global turbulence, irrespective of the regional turbulence, irrespective of the local turbulence. Doha Bank sustaining its performance as a good institution. Clearly, if you recognize 2002 to 2007, world at large is booming. Inflation was on, every market was picking up, Doha Bank graph was ascending. If you say 2008 to date, the world is technically under recession, trying to struggle out to come out, Doha Bank is still ascending. The graph from 2002 is only one direction. It is ascending trend. And twice, mind you, we have taken money from the shareholders. We optimize the resources. The asset allocation model has worked. And again, given the size of the balance sheet, given the size of the shareholders' money, we managed to maintain a very high performance ratios. Intellectual assets from world over. Professional integrity, corporate governance, transparency is the governing principles in addition to participative leadership. We share the vision. We share the leadership to ensure we become integral part of the global functional makeup. That's precisely the reason we open our offices around the world. It is started with Dubai in 2004, and again Kuwait in 2006, 2007, and again Japan, South Korea, Singapore, Turkey. They're all coming in between 2004 to 7, and globalization was on, but the world was drifting towards a different direction. So we put on hold the globalization principle. Again, we revived when we know our financial stability is functional, visible. And again, we said in 2010, Frankfurt, London. London was almost in 2009. We now started back in track. This year, April, we opened our office in Sydney, Sharjah. Again, we have today, it's a pleasure and privilege. We cut the ribbon today at 11 o'clock, and we are proud to be part of it. The reason why we are here is to recognize the opportunities between bilateral trade, investments, banking, and finance. It's not about banking alone. My mission to open up an office in Japan was not to just go for banking alone. Opening the commercial gates is a responsive act to promote the bilateral values between these two blocks. That's what we did. Commercial viability is not visible to me, but I know convergence is there between these two blocks. Commercial viability will come in. You invent yourself by creating opportunities. You create a business model in terms of trade, in terms of acceptances, in terms of inviting the businessmen to come to the Gulf states and look at the economic momentum. That's an opportunity, which I'll explain to you. If you look at the Gulf states, trillions of dollars have been set in as a committed development expenditure. 1.6 trillion. So 1.6 to 1.7 was the budget expenditure pronounced for the next 3 years plan. Fiscal framework, if you look at only this year, between 2013 to 14, it is over 377 million, 121 million from Saudi Arabia. That's the single largest GCC partner for Canada. Healthcare and education, as there are multilateral agreements taking place between Canada and Saudi Arabia. 121 billion is the minimum expenditure for this year. And again, next is $116 billion, US dollars for Kuwait, $65 billion for UAE, $45 billion for Qatar, $24 billion for Oman, $8 billion for Bahrain. Sum it up, it is $377 billion is the committed expenditure for this year alone. And if you look at the breakup in terms of GDP, it is over 720 billion is the annual GDP for Saudi Arabia. Second is, again, UAE, 360, 370 billion. Then comes Qatar, over $200 billion. Qatar generates, in terms of macroeconomics, over $50 billion as an investable surplus. It's an extraordinary, well-founded relationship, bilateral opportunity. But we need to create the opportunity. We need to create trade. We need to showcase the opportunities. We need to disseminate information. That's what we did in the rest of the place. In terms of bilateral frame, it is not confined to banking alone. It is trade, investment, banking, and finance. That's where the opportunities. As on date, if you look at the bilateral frame, it is in substance overall 6.7 billion, 3.3 billion imports for Canada, 3.4 billion exports. Now, if you sum it up, it is 6.7. It was 4.6 in 2010 when I came in here to looking at the possibility of setting up an operation here. It has moved in the right direction. As I said, Saudi Arabia is the single largest recipient of the bilateral advantage. Over 400 billion is Saudi Arabia. There are enough investment protection agreements signed, healthcare and education. You have the telling story. You have world-class systems can be imported in Saudi Arabia. And again, oil and gas export is happening. The second largest relationship is UAE, 1.6 billion. That is going in the right direction again. Then comes Qatar. Qatar has got very many agreements with Canada. Qatar Petroleum has got a wing. Qatar Gas 3 is being consigned along with Repsol, LNG, liquefied natural gas. Qatar is also investing in the Suncor along with Centrica, over $1 billion Canadian dollars. That's a simple example. There are growing opportunities which is not visible to you because there is no one to share the knowledge base. That's why we are here. Our intention is to disseminate the information, as our purpose is to invite the Canadian Chamber, Canadian bankers, Canadian corporates to the Gulf states, showcase as a Gulf bank the opportunities, share the information, showcase the market opportunities, and invite the corporates, invite the SMEs. Funding is incidental. Banking is incidental. To support your domestic franchise there, what sort of opportunities exist? How can you set up your business? How do you incorporate your business? How do we ensure project advisories are given to you? How do we ensure you have value advantage in setting up your business is the purpose for which we are here. That is precisely the reason why we commissioned our office today. We're keen on working with you all as partners. In terms of international trade, we have the largest market share in Qatar, and we are growing with our global representation in 12 to 13 countries, and the list is in the right direction. We are going to create intra-trade opportunities, and we are also looking at SMEs to come in, businessmen to come in. Doing business in the Gulf states is easy, especially Qatar. You have a flat tax system, 10%, that's it. You can have foreign ownership. If you have local alignment, that's a different. There could be 100% concession in terms of investment partnership. But there are opportunities for you to have cost-effective capital. Your borrowing becomes cheaper. You have tax rate, as I said, it is simplified, it's straightforward, flat. There's no progressive taxation. And again, cost of labor is relatively effective for you to run a business model, which is, it could be transfer of technologies, it could be asset management, it could be wealth management, it could be banking, or it could be SME who can partake in the economic progression in the Gulf states. You look at the market as one, integrated outfit as Gulf state as one, and start building your business model. So I call upon everyone in this room to look at the possibility of working with Doha Bank, and we are here to facilitate your business. Together we will grow. That's the very purpose of our mission today. And I compliment one and all for supporting us over the years as Doha Bank and the team. And I invite you to come to Qatar and the Gulf states and explore yourself the market opportunities. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your kind attention. I would like to respond to any questions which you have. I'm on time. Yes, please.
Benoit Thomas, The Weekly Voice. Thank you for the kind words, very encouraging words about Canada, Dr. Seetharaman, but I was wondering why not the U.S.? I mean, you're so much in love with Canada that it had to be the one in North America had to be in Toronto. What made you, choose us over the biggest economy in the world?
We have plans to set up a rep office in United States as well. I should tell you that. But as on date, I see the financial stability here. I see more and more synergistic values can be created between these two blocks. US is a very matured market, and it has got a growing relationship with the Gulf states. And we used to have an office. I want to put you in perspective as such. We have a full-scale branch. We have had a full-scale branch in Wall Street. With the changing face of the world, the dynamics were different. And we are scaling down to, as a rep office, we have applied for a license. Hopefully it should come through in the next 6 months' time. So we will be having, and Canada and US are very strong bilateral partners. I'm aware of it, and definitely will explore that option as well.
Thank you.
Please.
Dr. Seetharaman, I'm Rakhi from Asian Connections. In your presentation, you were mentioning that Doha Bank is looking for trade partnership with Canada. Now, with the financial condition, financial scenario at the present, what sort of time frame are you looking for things to really start taking off?
We started today.
So positive.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes. We are on the road. Go. We build relationship. That's the very purpose. As I said, trade is only incidental. As I said, banking is incidental. Our intention is to create commercial opportunities. It could be trade, as I said. It could be investments. There are Gulf states looking at market opportunities for investment. Qatar has invested in multiple pockets. You know it. Barclays, Chelsea Barracks, Harrods, Shard Glass. Again, when it comes to Germany, it's Volkswagen, Porsche. They own 16% of Volkswagen, Agricultural Bank of China. So there are investment opportunities. There could be investment partnership here. We can bring in the players to look at the possibilities, private equities, private high net worth individuals who are interested in investing here. But we need to have knowledge base. We need to understand the dynamics of the profile of the customers or whom we refer. So those are the nuances we will explore. One is G2G, another one is B2B, bank to bank, another one B2C, bank to customers. There are multiple points where we can synchronize and create synergistic opportunities in substance. There are many bankers sitting here. They must be having a lot of questions, no? Media is sitting. Many media people are sitting. Any clarifications required? I think we are getting set for the lunch on, is it? If there is no questions, I'll say thank you one and all for coming here, and we are delighted to be integral part of this economic makeup. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.